Welcome to Forum 360 on your Western Reserve Public Media television channels 45, 49, and also Rubber City radio stations. I'm your host today, Bill Steven Saus, and we have an exciting and entertaining guest with a wide variety of information to pass along. And we'll be, of course, talking about his many years as a volunteer in amateur theater here in the Akron area, Northeastern Ohio area. Our guest is Ian Haberman. He's an author, a director, an educator, and an attorney practicing in Medina County. And Ian, it's a pleasure to have you on Forum 360.
My pleasure to be here.
And of course, we're going to focus ultimately on your work with the Weather Vane Theater, which is in the Akron area, and your longtime association, 35 years as a volunteer and as a member of the Board of Trustees for many years, and very active as an actor and a director. You didn't originally come to Ohio. You first went from New York City, where you grew up, to Rhode Island. Tell us a little bit about your background, your education, and where you started in New York City as a young person.
Well, I was born in Brooklyn.
All right.
And grew up in Forest Hills, New York. My early years were in Forest Hills. Then the family moved to Detroit and then Rhode Island. And I went to high school and college in Rhode Island. And then my folks moved back to the New York area. I stayed in Rhode Island, finished my undergraduate degree at Brown, and then came to Cleveland 5 decades ago in 1966 to be a graduate student at what was then Western Reserve University, subsequently Case Western Reserve University, studying in history.
Right.
And I received an MA and a PhD in history. And early on, for some bizarre reason, I was asked if I would be interested in serving as assistant dean of the undergraduate men's college. At that point, it was called Adelbert College. And this was in the summer of 1969. I was 24 years old, and I was asked if I'd be interested in serving as assistant dean for about a year. And I said, okay. And 1 year became 10.
Wow.
And so there was time for a change in 1979. And as I tell people, I had been the pre-law advisor for the undergraduates at Case Western Reserve. And since I had been giving out such great advice, I took it and went to law school. And I graduated from the Case Western Reserve Law School in 1982. And so I've been an attorney for almost 35 years.
Right. And your avocation was theater. You said that when you were young, of course, your parents, your mom would go to Broadway to see the shows.
Yeah, I grew up in a house that had an interest in theater. My mother, who will be 95 in a couple of weeks, can tell you that she first went to a Broadway show, I think in 1936, either On Your Toes or Babes in Arms, and paid 90 cents to get a ticket to see a Broadway show.
And that was before Ticketmaster and Ticketron.
Yes, there's no such thing.
They had to stand in line down at the box office. So from that New York background and Brown University in Rhode Island, you really, throughout those years, weren't active in community theater. It took you some time to get to Cleveland and Northeast Ohio before you started seeking information about community theater.
Right. I always had an interest in seeing shows, and I guess I had done the high school musical and the high school play, but really had not much involvement in theater after that. I didn't do anything in college. But once I was out here, sometime in the mid-'70s, I'd say, I decided on a lark to audition for a production of Arsenic and Old Lace at Chagrin Valley Little Theater in Chagrin Falls, and I got cast as the Reverend Dr. Harper, who was on the first 10 minutes of the play, and that is it. Wow. So that's what got me started. That there was the bug that bit me.
So that was your inspiration. Before that, you were an author. You wrote history. Matter of fact, a famous family from Cleveland, the Van Swearingen family.
Well, I did my dissertation on O.P. and M.J. Van Swearingen, a name that is probably not particularly well known these days, but in the 1920s and 30s, the Van Sweringens were the largest owners of railroads in the United States. They developed Shaker Heights, they built the Shaker Rapid, they built Terminal Tower. And then with the crash, everything was built on paper and they basically died broke. But that was my dissertation, and I gave a talk at the Western Reserve Historical Society, and one of the directors approached me and said, can we see a copy of your dissertation? And ultimately they decided to publish it, and it was sold out in hardcover and paperback.
See, and again, it's a part of Northeast Ohio history.
Very
part
much
of the, and then, of course, you were at Western Reserve, Case Western Reserve. Our production here is through Hudson Cable Television, the actual home of Western Reserve University.
Right.
Originally.
Western Reserve
College.
Academy now
Academy and
is
college,
what initially was Western Reserve College, founded in 1826.
Beautiful. Now, you got involved in theater here in the Akron Summit County area, known as Weather Vane. And we're
Right.
going to focus on that. You've been there for 35 years. How did you start involvement with Weather Vane Theater? This could inspire other people to get involved and become volunteers.
Well, as I say, I'd done a few shows at Chagrin, Valley Little Theater, and then my first job was at a firm in Akron, Retzel and Andrus, and I lived in Peninsula, and I would drive every morning along Riverview Road into Akron, and I saw a sign for a community theater called Weather Vane. And one day I checked it out and decided to audition for a show. It was a production of Kaufman and Ferber's Royal Family, sort of based on the Barrymores. And I auditioned and was cast, and I guess I'd say the rest is history.
Then how did you end up working on the Board of Trustees for many years and active as a director as well as an actor?
Well, I did several shows. I was asked to get involved in the play selection process. There was a play selection committee, and assisting in the director in the selection of plays for a season. And so after several years of involvement along those lines, I was invited to serve on the Board of Trustees. And
Which is vital for fundraising, you told me off the air.
It's vital for many, many things. Fundraising, ensuring the direction, the future direction of the theater, hiring the appropriate staff.
I see.
Board is a very, very significant component of what Weather Vane does.
Now, you said off the air that we were talking about, it started on Marshall Street?
Marshall Avenue.
Marshall
I believe
Avenue in
they
Akron?
called it the Barn. It was
In
founded,
Akron, Ohio?
Yeah, in Marshall Avenue in Akron, and it was founded by four prominent ladies in the Akron area who felt it was a good thing to have a community amateur theater. And from the initial production on Marshall Avenue, the place, it was, I believe, about 100 seats. And Weather Vane was there until, I believe, the late 40s, early 1950s. And then Weather Vane moved to a location on Copley Road. And it was there until 1970 when the current facility was constructed. And
In Merriman Valley.
in Merriman Valley, right.
And so many of our viewers and listeners might have recalled it coming from Copley to Merriman Valley. And that probably took a major capital investment to get that
From
project
what I
going.
understand, I was not involved at that time, but they sort of ran out of money. So if you walk backstage, you will see that the stage is sort of lopped off on a diagonal. But they paid for it. There was a mortgage burning ceremony, again, before I got involved. And but the facility that I knew in 1982, when I first did a show there, was what was constructed in 1970. Since then, there have been 3 additions to the facility. The first in the mid-'80s gave us some bathrooms on the first floor, so
Nice.
people did not have to walk to the second floor to go to the facilities. And then there was a major expansion to give us a new scene shop and a second story for classrooms and a costume shop. And then more recently, there was an expansion that increased the lobby and gave us some additional offices on the first floor. So there are significant expansions, and they only were accomplished with the hard work of volunteers and trustees and the absolutely amazing support that the Akron, Northeast Ohio community has given to Weathervane for so many years.
And now Weathervane's involved in a statewide community theater association?
Yeah, I believe Weathervane's a member of the Ohio Community Theater Association. Representatives of Weathervane's productions compete annually, and we've received several OCTA awards, I know that.
Beautiful. As a director, what were some of the most challenging, I'll let you think on this for a few minutes, what were some of the most challenging plays that you were directly involved with? Let's say 2 or 3. And I just want to take a moment to break. This is Forum 360. Thank you for watching on channels 45, 49, Fusion, Western Reserve Public Media. And thank you for listening on the Rubber City radio stations. My name is Bill Steven Saus. I'm your host today. My guest, you've been listening to and viewing, is Ian Haberman. I could say Dr. Ian Haberman, Attorney Ian Haberman, and Director of Community Theater Ian Haberman. And that's what we're challenged with today, to learn more about Weathervane and your involvement. You've been there for 35 years. And as I mentioned that, I posited that little question, what were 2 or 3 of the better or most challenging productions you got involved with and direct?
Okay, well, let me first say the only directing that I did as a director really involved the absolutely definitive productions of Hansel and Gretel and Jack and the Beanstalk.
Beautiful.
For our, usually they were
Youth.
at the Christmas show.
Right.
So I have not directed main stage or in our Dietz, our black box theater. So I don't want anyone to think that I am Hal Prince or Joe Papp or anything like that. But I have really not been a director in that sense. I have served twice as the interim artistic director of Weathervane when the board was undergoing a search for a new management. And the first time I did that was about 8 or 9 years ago. And then again, I served as interim artistic director about 2 years ago.
The community seems to get very active. How do you, being on the Board of Trustees for Weathervane Community Theater for so many years, and we'll put up the web page for Weathervane, and people can get involved that way. But how do people get involved as a cast member, as you did? What are some of the ways that Weathervane reaches out to the community?
Well, these days, the website is an absolutely critical component. People look less often to newspapers, but it's pretty common to see an audition notice in a newspaper. But the way, for example, the best way to get involved on stage, backstage, is to go to the website, www.weathervaneplayhouse.com, and you can put your name on the list for auditions. There's a volunteer coordinator who is there, and you could let him know of your interest, be it, again, as an actor, a designer, a host or an usher, We have a host of opportunities for people to design shows, be it sound or set or props, or most of our costumes are designed by our professional staff costume designer. But he is always in need of stitchers, and occasionally some of the productions there will be a guest designer for costumes and guest designers for sets and things like that. So the opportunities are limitless. And Weathervane has about almost $1 million budget these days. It is not what people think of as this little community theater where people get together and we're going to put on a show. It's a major endeavor. We have 2 theaters, a Founders Theater, which seats about 250, and our Black Box Theater, the Dietz Theater, where we do edgier and more controversial plays, and that seats about 50, has about 50 seats. So there are, both of those theaters are literally used year-round. We do, I believe, 12 productions a year. Main stage, Dietz, emerging artists for young people.
The variety is based on this play selection committee and the production selection committee. They look at various plays. How do they, you were on those committees.
Well, I was. We did not have really a full-time artistic director who would have that responsibility. Now Melanie Pepe is our artistic director, so she has ultimate responsibility for selecting a season. And she consults with various folks interested in Weathervane and interested in the kinds of shows we do when she puts together a season.
Have there been actors and actresses and singers and people on staff that have impressed you and maybe have gone on to bigger and better things?
Well,
some of the ones you remember?
I was in a production of Conversations with My Father about 20 years ago, and there was a young kid in that named John Magaro. And John Magaro is right now on Broadway in the revival of The Front Page.
Beautiful.
He was in The Big Short. He has been in any number of movies. And it's really kind of astounding to know that I was on stage with this young man. His mother is a trustee and active volunteer. His stepfather is an active actor and has designed sets at Weathervane. So it's really kind of exciting to see where he has gone.
There are a lot of, because we live in the greater Cleveland area, Northeast Ohio, and of course Kent State University, University of Akron Theater, and other theaters. There are many areas to get talent from and to find
Right.
people to get involved in Weathervane. So do you sometimes see your artistic people, the staff, going to other plays and saying, you might be good in something we might have in mind?
I am pretty sure they do. I know
Reach out to the
our
community.
professional staff is in touch with the folks at Kent State and Akron, and there is a lot of cross-pollination, shall we say,
Beautiful.
where actors, especially from Kent, come to Weathervane.
As an attorney, there are many types of laws that would deal with copyright and production restrictions. Has that ever been a problem for community theater when they're trying to get involved in a play and somebody might say, well, you can't use that material? Or does that ever come into play in your
Well, we're
background?
very, very sensitive to that. When I was interim artistic director, and was putting together the season, I was in contact with the various publishing houses in order to get the rights to do a particular play or
Right,
musical.
right.
So we don't. We're very, very sensitive to those legal obligations. We don't want to announce a season where we don't know that we're going to be able to do a particular play and or musical, and so I don't recall any problems with it. It's just part of the of doing business as a theater. You have to involve yourself with Samuel French, Inc., Dramatist Play Service,
Right.
Rogers and Hammerstein, Musical Theater International. All of these outfits really control the rights to the overwhelming bulk of plays that we do.
So the artistic integrity is maintained.
Well, we do our best.
How about the fact that you're a weekend, mostly weekend shows? You sometimes start on Thursdays through Sundays. Is that how
Right.
the-
Most shows run in our main stage, run Thursday, Friday, Saturday evening, Sunday afternoon. We have a play opening this weekend, A Kid Like Jake, which will run 2 weekends, but there are additional performances, I believe, Wednesday on for that particular play.
And we will put up on our screen some visuals of not only the website for, again, that is www.
WeatherVanePlayhouse.com. Very easy to remember. WeatherVanePlayhouse.com.
And I think we'll put up the box office, the phone number also. With your history, and you're going back many years, what do you think the show that got the people most involved, the audience? Was there some shows that get the audience involved? I think of one that some friends of mine always mentioned that you were involved in.
Yes, we did a production of the Rocky Horror Show.
Which is the famous movie, and
Well, the play was first,
was
and
first,
then,
and the
then it
movie came
became the
out.
Rocky Horror Picture Show. But we did the musical many years ago, and I played Dr. Scott and had the distinct honor of doing the time warp in high heels and fishnet stockings and so on and so forth. And I know your boss, whose name I will leave out,
Right.
was there dancing the same, doing the time warp in the aisle with his wife.
everybody had a good time from what I understand.
It was great, great, great fun. I used to say the most fun I ever had on stage was playing Smee in a production of Peter Pan over at Goodyear.
Right.
Well, then when I got to do Dr. Scott in the Rocky Horror Show, that took over as the most fun.
We've got about 4 or 5 minutes. If there's anything you would like to bring to the attention of our Northeastern Ohio viewers that you think they might like to know about 2017 and the Weather Vane Community Theater.
Well, since I'm trying to be as up-to-date as possible, I have some information on my cell phone, which I received from our artistic director, again, Melanie Pepe. And again, as I mentioned, a play called A Kid Like Jake is opening this weekend. It's sponsored in part by the Gay Community Endowment Fund of the Akron Community Foundation in partnership with an organization called GLSEN, which stands for Gay, Lesbian, Straight Educational Network. And this is a really challenging play involving the parents of a transgender child. You don't see Jake at all, but you see his parents and other folks.
Discussions.
And there's a workshop that's going to be put on for educators on the 20th of January. And again, to probably find more information, I would suggest either looking at the website or calling Weather Vane. And again, you said you're going to post the number. You made a comment before, how do people get involved? Well, on January 28th, there is a stage manager training and workshop. Anyone interested in stage management is welcome to attend this free workshop. And it will take place from 3 to 7 p.m. And again, contact Weather Vane to find that out. I don't know if people know what a stage manager is, but that's the person who basically says, okay, lights here, sound here, curtain go up, curtain go down. It's the absolutely integral person involved with the show. We have a musical opening on February 3rd called I Love You Because, and spring youth theater classes begin February 4th, and that's for ages 3 to 18. for those interested in acting, musical, theater, and dance.
Thank you for the
So-
information. Ian
And
Haberman.
again-
We appreciate Ian Haberman as our expert in over 20 years, but 35 years as an active volunteer for Weather Vane Theater. And you've been probably over 25 years as an attorney. And
About 35 as an attorney
35 as
also.
an attorney
Yeah,
also.
sort of
So that keeps you very active.
very busy.
We're thankful that you were able to take some time out of your busy day and your schedule. We know you're going to become more active again as the season starts, and for the various fundraising events you get involved with for Weather Vane. And it's just good to see community theater here in Northeast Ohio. Again, my guest, Ian Haberman, thank you for being a part
Thank
of
you for having me.
our Forum 360 program right here on public television, Western Reserve Public Media, television's channels 45, 49, the Fusion channels, and our Rubber City radio stations in the Akron area. Thanks for having us and being a part of our daily life here as a theater person.
It's been my pleasure, and it's been a pleasure to be involved with Weather Vane for 35 years. It has brought me incredible joy and incredible satisfaction. It is a great resource and element of the Northeast Ohio community.
Thank you, Ian Haberman.
Forum 360 is brought to you with support from Electric Impulse Communications, Kim and Harvey Nelson, Rubber City Radio Group, Akronist.com, Hudson Cable, Medical Mutual of Ohio, Forum 360 supporters, and the Shaw Jewish Community Center of Akron.